All right, so we're away. So firstly, I'm just going to say welcome everyone. So good to see you again. This is the fourth and final webinar of the intimacy series, really unpacking some schemas and modes that block healthy intimacy and connection. And today's one is on the happy child mode. It's the webinar I'm most excited to present to you because I really feel that intimacy and connection centers a lot around this happy child mode that doesn't get much of a look in, if you sort of go to some traditional schema therapy trainings and the textbooks and things like that. I think that this mode really needs a bit of a, reintroduction back into the psyche. So excited to present the information today. And I really feel that you're all going to get a lot out of this personally, but it's going to help your clients a lot too with the work that you do with helping them to improve their intimate relationships. All right, so please just bear with me while I share my screen and then we're away. Okay, so I'm also aware that some people have had a lot of trouble logging in today, but then I've got other people that are here and are okay. So I'm really sorry, I'm not quite sure how that happens for some people and not others, but you will be all getting the recording. So maybe you just get an extra long lunch break today and then watch this at another time. All right, so the title of today is Integrating the Happy Child Mode, bringing joy, delight, and spontaneous expression back into the relationship. All right. So why don't we start with just our traditional definition of the happy child mode by Jeffrey Young, and this is just straight from his website. The happy child mode, or the part of us, this is the part of us that feels loved, contented, connected, satisfied, fulfilled, protected, accepted, praised, worthwhile, nurtured, guided, understood, validated, self-confident, competent, appropriately autonomous or self-reliant, safe, resilient, strong, in control, adaptable, included, optimistic, and spontaneous. Now, just don't those words just create a certain type of energy? I think it's just such a lovely definition of the happy child mode. And it's really what we would expect to see in any child who was having all of their core needs met. Any child who is in a safe and nurturing environment, we would expect to see some or all of these qualities present themselves. And you can also really get a sense of how these qualities are so important to bring into our intimate relationships, because our partners ideally are someone that we feel safe with, we feel free to sort of be self-expressed, to bring our own natural, spontaneous self-expression and share that with them. All right. Now I'm just going to chat a little bit about the parasympathetic nervous system and intimacy. Okay, not a full lecture on polyvagal theory or anything like that, but some reference to it. So in polyvagal theory, the social engagement system is that one part of the vagus nerve that signals that we're in a safe environment, that we're free, that we can connect with others and be playful and spontaneous. And there's no fears or worries or concerns. So this is the domain of the nervous system where intimacy is possible. So intimacy is not possible, in those other domains of that fight or flight response, when we feel like there's just too much stress going on, whether it's stress in our relationship or stress in the outside world. There's too much stress going on for us to be able to really relax into, intimacy and play and fun, because, our brains are signaling that there's some kind of problem or threat that needs to be attended to, which means that all of our energy is going towards more protective sort of measures rather than relaxed, playful mode. My definition of intimacy, when someone's asked me to define intimacy, this is what I came up with. I said that with intimacy, there's an opening up and a letting in. So with intimacy, emotionally, there is, there's a letting someone into your heart. So there's an invitation for them to get closer to you, to be closer to you, to your deeper feelings, your fears, your dreams, your needs, and your desires. So emotionally, there's this real sort of vulnerability where you're sort of allowing someone to be close enough to you that they really sort of, are able to sort of see more inside of you than, say, other people that are more at a distance. Okay, and obviously we need to feel safe to be able to open up to share some things with other people. There needs to be a certain degree of safety to do that. All right. Also, sexually, the body needs to feel relaxed enough to surrender and soften. There's this sort of sense that the body is open and inviting. And I say, especially for women, with women, there needs to be this sort of softening, this, relaxed sort of feeling if there's to be any sexual intimacy. And the opposite of that, if there's too much tension and stress, it's almost like this, it creates this sort of closing and also this repelling, like kind of, get away from me. I'm too uptight or stressed to let you close to me, to let you in. Okay, so that's why it's really important to understand that the parasympathetic nervous system is a really important part of our nervous system to be putting way up the top as a priority if connection and intimacy is something that you want to facilitate and cultivate long term with a partner. So therefore, the happy child mode, I believe, is the most useful mode to immediately measure and track the nervous system, how we're doing, and therefore our availability for connection and intimacy. I can quickly decipher or determine how available I am for intimacy and connection by tuning into how integrated is my happy child mode, in my life right now. If she's nowhere to be seen and I haven't had any fun for months and everything's been all serious and stressful, well, of course, my happy child mode is kind of locked in a cupboard somewhere. There hasn't been a lot of play or fun. And therefore, there's also not a lot of availability for intimacy in my relationship either. All right. Please feel free to type in any questions that you have as we go along. Otherwise, I'm just going to, plow through all of this content. Yeah. So the goal of this webinar is really to create a paradigm shift for you as therapists and also as humans to really start to prioritize this happy child mode back in our own lives. All right. Now here I've got just a couple of images of, a happy child mode, a contented child. There's so many different varieties of happiness, of contentment, of joy. And I encourage all of you to think back to your own childhoods. What were signs that you're in a happy and contented mode? For some kids, they just love being alone with a book. You know what I mean? Like just in their own company. Others, other kids, it's more about sort of adventure and something that sort of really kind of gives them that sense of excitement, a little bit of risk. For other kids, it might be about creating something, building something, solving a problem. Like that's when they're in their sort of happy place. For some kids, like this little girl, yes, she's reading, but she's also all dressed up. She's got the flowers in her hair and she's got this pretty dress on and her hair's all done lovely and she's got those sweet little shoes on. So a lot of little girls like to, express beauty and they just love dress ups and things like that. And that's a really normal and natural thing for a child to want to do. For some kids, it's about exploring in nature. And other kids, you know, it was when they're playing a musical instrument. So I just wanted to offer you these images because I'd like you to be able to tune into your own happy child mode and be really in touch with, you know, what's your happy place, and, you know, what signals relaxation to you, what signals freedom or playfulness or fun to you. Because you're going to want to create an intimate relationship with somebody where that is honored. You know, if you can't carve out your own happy place in your intimate relationship, or you have to disconnect so much from this side of you as a sacrifice to be in this relationship, I do not believe it's sustainable over time. We have to be creating intimate relationships where my happy place and your happy place, you know, are both honored. Yeah, no, soccer. So yeah, competition, you know, so yes, there's some differences for boys and girls, you know, not just from a social stereotype point of view, but, you know, there, you know, from a masculine energy point of view, some masculine energy partners like to be adventurous or competing, you know, that type of thing. And that's where they get a lot of their energy or libido. Whereas a more feminine partner might get more energy and libido from being lovely and delightful and dressing up. Now, that's not always a traditional male-female thing, but it's just something to really consider, that, you know, we don't want to set up relationships where either partner are being blocked from their natural essence, from their natural energies. For example, say if you had a traditional straight couple, the female liked to dress up a lot. She liked to dress up when she goes out at, you know, at night. She liked to put on makeup and, you know, and clothes and do hair and all of that. Say if she had a partner that wanted to suppress that, didn't want her to engage in that activity, became very jealous, that's going to affect the connection and the intimacy in that relationship. Okay. Similarly, in a straight couple, let's say, the guy, let's say the guy, he likes to go to soccer and he plays on this soccer team and he has some mates there. And say if he had a female partner that became very jealous of him creating connections outside of the relationship and says, I don't want you to go to soccer, I don't like the guys that you hang out with there, I want you to spend all of your time with me, that's also going to impact on the relationship. Because, you know, in both of these scenarios, the person is being blocked from tapping into that real essence, that natural essence that gives them energy and that and libido. And that actually is a good energy that we want to cultivate in our relationships. All right. So let me just talk about some threats to the happy child mode, because that's what we're all about in schema therapy, is clearing out the blocks, whatever's blocking these more healthy and adaptive states. We're trying to heal and clear those out. Okay, so the first obvious threat to the happy child mode is direct trauma, abuse, physical, sexual, verbal, emotional abuse and neglect. But also environmental disasters, poverty, starvation, those types of things. And there's enough research and there's enough training out there in treating trauma. That's not what's going to be the focus of today. The focus of today is going to be more on what I call, or what other people call, secondary trauma, which is the impact of unhealed trauma on a child via the unhealed schemas and modes of a parent. So when a parent has experienced direct trauma, when a parent has suffered from abuse in their own childhoods and not healed from their schemas, from their trauma, there's a passing on of trauma that goes on, which doesn't seem as severe on the outset. And you get a lot of clients saying, oh, my childhood wasn't that bad. You get this a lot. They say, oh, you know, we were loved. But when you dig a little bit deeper, there were some patterns going on that relate to a parent's unhealed trauma. such as, you know, unhealed depression or anxiety that they've sort of passed on through their parenting. That's going to be what I'm focusing on more today. Okay, so as per my other webinars, I've got a few pathways for you to consider for your clients, so you can kind of get a better sense of, you know, what am I dealing with here when you have clients that come in or couples that come in and say, you know, we're not connecting well at the moment. There's not a lot of intimacy. You know, we're in a bit of a rut, that type of thing. Here are some ideas for you to explore. Okay, so I'm going to offer you 2 healing pathways here today. I'm not going to be going deep into when there's trauma, when there's been direct trauma of one or both partners in a relationship. Obviously there's a lot of treatment that goes into just the direct processing of that trauma, if that makes sense. So what I'm talking about is this widespread disconnect that goes on through society that is the result of you know, I just think many of us have grown up in environments where there's been unmet core emotional needs due to parents having unhealed schemas and traumas that there's a passing on that goes on. Okay, so here's this first healing pathway to the happy child mode, and it's the fun and play pathway. All right, so now we would want to understand what blocks a person from accessing the fun and play aspect of the happy child. Because over on the left-hand side, we have just a nurturing and safe environment, in which case there's the development of this happy child mode. Okay, and if we wanted to, if we were hoping to see just a continuation into adulthood, which is this healthy intimacy, but there's a block there. We want to know what is blocking this person from just bringing that same happiness, joy, energy that they experienced in their childhood. What's blocking that? Okay, so in the middle, we see that the block is an achievement and external validation addiction. Okay, and how do we get that kind of addiction? Through these 2 schemas. So the first one is the unrelenting standards schema, and the second one is an approval seeking or recognition seeking schema. Okay, so let's think of an example. So say we've got a child who's otherwise a fairly happy-go-lucky child, or they're a contented child. They like reading, or they like building blocks, or, you know, they like horses, or they like riding you know, motorbikes, or whatever. It doesn't matter. If the message in that family is we don't have time to play, there's no time for fun and games here in life because we have to achieve something. You know, you've got to study, you've got to use every minute of your spare time in studying to achieve certain results, right? At school, for example, academically. Or we have to use all of our spare time on doing something, being of service, for example. Yeah, being of service to other people, or getting really good at a musical instrument. But that means there's not to be any lounging around. You're not allowed to just lie on the couch and relax. You have to be doing something, working towards something. So that's one particular message that a family could give the child. That is basically, it's not okay for you to rest. You always need to be sort of focused on an outcome, therefore in your head, not in your body, but sort of more sort of planning, problem solving, learning, that kind of energy. Another example would be, you know, strong approval seeking or recognition seeking. So the message is, well, we just have to think about how other people see us all the time. So we have to be behaving in certain ways that make us appear good to the outside world, which means we can't have a messy house, for example. You have to spend a lot of time getting neat, and it's all about having a neat house and getting good grades and behaving well. That can block this sort of fun and play, because that sort of blocks this sort of the spontaneous aspect of children playing. Is that sometimes they are quite impulsive and they are messy and it is a bit chaotic, and maybe sometimes they do say something that's not quite socially appropriate. But if there's such a strong clamping down on that, then it does block fun and play. And the person or the child in that situation grows up with these schemas, which are, I have to think more about how other people see me, about impressing others, about doing the right thing, that type of thing. And that takes them out of their body again, and puts them in their head, thinking, analyzing, working out, how should I behave? What are the expectations on me? Okay, I hope that is making sense. So I'll trust that it is, unless I see a little chat. Okay, so that's a block. Okay, that's blocking fun and play. Okay, so that would be one healing pathway that we might want to look at in therapy, is how can we facilitate guiding our clients into reconnecting with fun and play and rest, and also just existing more in their bodies, because if they're not able to do that and they're just in their heads too much, they're not going to be available for intimacy and connection with a partner, because they're always going to be thinking about, what have I got to get done next? What's my task list? Just being really conscious of, I don't know, social media or what others are doing, or keeping up with the Joneses or something like that. And that really takes them out of their body. Okay, so this lovely quote by Michaela Boehm, who some of you may have heard of, is like an intimacy guru. She lives in Los Angeles, California somewhere, but she originates from Austria. She's wonderful. And she has this quote: "The asana, or posture, of perpetual doing, coping and striving is an unnatural position for a woman desiring an intimate partner." So she works a lot with busy women who are addicted to being busy, are addicted to perpetual doing, almost without a break. Like every minute of every day is filled up with tasks and demands and looking after other people or work demands, and the energy is really sort of going out to the outside world, to other people. So there's a real giving away of the energy, but there's not a replenishing. It's not sort of coming back in. But that, that our downtime when we're sort of not doing anything, when we've stopped and we're not in any we've got no task to achieve or some goal to accomplish, there's nothing that we're trying to tick off our list, they're the moments where we replenish our energy. And if that's not going on for a female partner in a relationship, and I've worked with both straight and gay couples, lesbian couples, where there tends to be one partner that needs to achieve that sort of more relaxation if there's going to be any sexual intimacy between the two. Often, I'm not saying always, but often, men can tolerate that sort of real sort of outward stress, doing, come home, and not necessarily need to sort of drop too much into their bodies for sexual intimacy to occur. I hope this is making sense for you. They can go straight from do, come home, and still be up for, sexual intimacy, because they don't need to drop into some kind of relaxed state. But women need to really come down from that outward doing state and really reconnect with the body. There needs to be a softening and opening, are slowing down before they feel like they can invite that sexual connection. So that's why I really like this quote by Michaela Boehm. She just reminds us that, you know, sometimes you've got to be very disciplined about how you structure your life. Yeah, your lifestyle, your work-life balance. Sometimes you have to be very conscious and go, you know, how much time in a day do I want to dedicate to, you know, to doing, looking after other people, and is that impacting on my connection with my partner? So I've got a question here, maybe too deep a question. No, not for me. But how does one help their client find the happy child if the actual childhood was not safe, happy, secure, content? Yep, beautiful question. So we're going to do an imagery for that, where I'm going to guide you to try and, what you're doing is you're suggesting things that children would enjoy in this imagery. You're saying, you know, some children like reading books, or some children like, you know, being on the swing, or other kids like playing dress ups. And you're actually doing what a good parent would do with a child. Yeah, you're providing suggestions, and you're asking your client, so which one resonates with you? So we're going to do an imagery for that. Okay, beautiful question. Okay, let's move on to healing pathway number 2, the assertiveness pathway. All right, so this is what I see as this other block to the happy child mode, which I think is really prolific in people, just in the general population. So not even talking about, you know, direct trauma clients here. We're talking about us as therapists. We're talking about everyday people. This is what I see as just a really common block to the happy child mode. Okay, so here we have an otherwise nurturing and safe environment on the left-hand side, you know, with this happy child mode. The outcome, again, would be healthy intimacy. But if the block is other people's moods, if this child is growing up in an environment where a parent has mood issues that they're not addressing, okay, so maybe they have a very fiery temper, they go off the handle a lot, they yell whenever they you know, come up against problems or challenges in their life. They sort of just, you know, just project it onto the family all around them, you know, like, and some of you may be aware of the sort of the heart's magnetic field around us, like a 3-meter radius around us, where we can really feel into someone's energy. And you would have all been around people that are giving off this really unhealthy or uninviting or sort of scary kind of energy, which makes you just want to back away. So that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about children growing up in families where the parents, where the adults were not taking full responsibility for the management of their mood. And usually that is because they've got unhealed trauma. You know, we've got parents that have experienced trauma in their childhoods, but they haven't fully addressed that. They've sort of suppressed it, you know, blocked it out, attempted to block it out with alcohol or whatever, but now it's interfering in the happy child's natural energy, right? So other people's moods lead to these schemas: subjugation and self-sacrifice. So if a child gets the message that I can't be happy and joyful, it's not safe for me, because maybe that triggers other people to get really annoyed at me because I'm all happy, full of life, and a parent, say a mother or father, is not happy and full of life, then can you see how that child would sort of try to subjugate, try to suppress their own all of their emotions, really, all of their natural expression, because they can see that by being naturally expressive or expressing joy or just being spontaneous in their emotional expression, that is going to trigger another parent, you know. And so they're really then starting to try and micromanage the mood of other people, and that comes at a big cost to the happy child mode. Or self-sacrifice. You know, they feel like I can't just be relaxing and playing because mum needs my help or dad needs my help, and if I don't get up and do them and be of service, then I'm going to be directly causing suffering in my parents. So they feel that they have to give up their contentment or their joy because they feel very guilty. Does that make sense? They would feel very guilty if they were just engaging in their own pleasurable pursuits, because the message is that they're somehow contributing to other parents' negative mood state. Okay, so the healing pathway here is assertiveness. So I'm going to just be talking about some ideas that we can use with our clients if that's the particular pathway. So here's a picture of me and my love, and I've had to heal both of those pathways. So, you know, what I'm sharing with you is, you know, I've applied it. So this is a quote that I wrote on one of my Instagram posts. The two biggest threats to feminine energy, one, unrelenting demands from the outside world, and two, other people's moods. So, you know, when I think about feminine energy, my own feminine energy being very generous and joyful and wanting to kind of, you know, share my you know, joyful experiences with other people and connect and relate. When I think about the things that really threaten that or suppress that, it's if I have too many things on my plate, too many things on my task list that I feel like I need to accomplish, then that's going to threaten that energy that I have, and also other people's moods. So I'm very sensitive to other people's negative moods because that's my own schema. You know, my schema is subjugation. I feel like I have to be very conscious of making sure that other people around me are happy, and feeling responsible for other people's happiness, and feeling guilty if I'm happy and someone else is stressed. I used to take on this idea that well, then it's my job to fix their negative mood, because I can't have me being happy and them not being happy. There's something wrong with that picture. So this is yeah, but I think if there were any men on the webinar, they would be saying no, they're also the two biggest threats to masculine energy. So maybe it's not just unique to feminine energy. I think anytime we've got too many tasks on our hands, that's not going to be, you know, there's a limit. We all have a limit as to how many things we can be juggling in a day. There's only so many hours in a day. There's only so much petrol in our tanks, you know, and we just can't be sort of giving out energy all the time. There needs to be a replenishing going on. Yeah. Okay. Good. All right. So hopefully we're getting a little bit of paradigm shifts going on here. All right. So when working with either an individual client who's talking about, you know, some blocks to intimacy and connection, or with a couple, here are some questions that I suggest you might like to use to sort of really open up this topic, this discussion. Firstly, ask each individual, well, what did you first find attractive about your partner? And this helps me to understand if there was even a sort of attraction there to begin with, if they were actually attracted to them in that sort of the adult way that we find, you know, people attracted, like, oh, I desire that person, as opposed to schema chemistry, which is I just felt really lonely in my life and I was wondering if I would ever meet someone, and then they came along and I felt like they rescued me. That's not attraction. That's more feeling that's more of a codependency going on there. So you want to try and cut through that and understand, what did you first find attractive about your partner? And that is going to probably reveal their partner's happy child mode. You know, like we are attracted to this happy child mode in others. That's what we usually find attractive when they're at their most free and joyful. Yeah. You know, it's unusual for someone to say, oh, I just really liked how serious he was about his work. That's not normally the thing that we find most attractive about a partner. That might be sort of what we might admire that and say, oh, that's good to know that they're sensible and all of that. But what do we find most attractive about our partner? And also, what do you think your partner first found attractive about you? So then you're actually getting the client to tune into their own awareness of their own happy child mode. Because if I can say, oh, I think my partner was attracted to my, you know, my happy-go-lucky mood or my sort of spontaneity or whatever, then you're starting to really tune into your own happy child mode there. And what do you look forward to doing together when you're both retired or on holidays or kid-free or debt-free? I really love this question because what you're doing is you're removing all the stresses of life or the external demands from the imagination. You kind of like saying, bypassing that and saying, when you're both at your most free, what do you look forward doing together? And that really does reveal a lot about a couple, I believe. It reveals whether there is that attraction there, whether these two people are free to connect to their own happy child mode, or it may reveal that there is no attraction there. Because when you ask that question, someone might say, oh, like, I don't want to spend my retirement with my partner. You know, that creates a feeling of dread. And that would tell us that perhaps there is not attraction there. Yeah. That they actually don't want to be with their partner, because usually we do want to be with our partners when we're free of stress and worry and demands, and we're free to play, we're free to have fun. Then usually it's not too hard for a person in a relationship to be able to tap into that energy and go, oh, well, if we were both kid-free or debt-free, I see us, I don't know, just having a nice simple life and just tending to the garden together and just both reading our books together. Like that might be one couple's idea of them in the happy child mode. Another couple might say, well, I see us traveling around, you know, and going on adventures. And another couple might say, oh, we would just create a business together or whatever, you know. But the point is that this question itself taps into the essence of each partner's happy child mode. All right. Okay, and then I'd be asking, well, what do you believe is the main block to bringing that joy or energy into your relationship right now? You know, what stops you from bringing that into this relationship with this person? And this question taps into the schema-based blocks to expressing spontaneous joy in the relationship. So here we might get the idea that there's that fun and play is a block. It's like, I just don't have any time. I've got so many demands on my plate. You know, my kids have got 3 different sports that they go to. And I wake up at 6 and I take them to school, and then I go to work, and then I pick them up, and then I take them to soccer, and then I get home at 7 o'clock, and then I cook dinner and I bath them and I put them to bed, and then it's 9 o'clock. You can see the picture that's being painted here, which is I don't prioritize downtime. I don't prioritize fun, relaxation, me time. I've created a life where every minute is dedicated to being of service to other people and fulfilling sort of duties and roles. And we have to get real. We have to get real and say, okay, that is going to impact on your intimate relationship. you know, because intimate relationships require that sort of parasympathetic nervous system activity, or that social engagement system, that enjoying each other's company. And it's very, very hard to enjoy each other's company when we're just robots, you know, just doing. And our entire life revolves around being of service and completing tasks and being at work. So integrating the happy child mode is the responsibility of the healthy adult. In adulthood, only the healthy adult mode of the individual can truly create the safe and nurturing environment for the happy child mode to flourish. So no one is coming to give you permission to prioritize your joy. It's up to you. No one's going to come along and say, oh, you've worked really hard this week, Tracy. You know, you should really just slow things up. Or, you know, no one's coming along to say people are going to be fine, you know, your clients are going to be fine, you can start to see less clients. No one's coming along to give you permission to structure your life in a way that supports connection and intimacy. It's up to all of us as individuals, and it's up to our clients to choose, you know, well, do you want to downsize? Do you want to have, you know, you've got a $2 million house and you're stressed out, you know, like with this 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. kind of daily schedule, you know, is that what you want? Do you want to continue on that path, or do you want to, you know, change your lifestyle that would facilitate and cultivate a better connection in your marriage? Okay, so now I'm going to demonstrate a few examples of imagery. Okay, so the first, so the question before was, what if someone hasn't experienced fun and joy? Okay, so let's do an imagery now, and I'm going to add in or weave in what you might say if you were aware that the client that you're working with didn't have a lot of joy or fun or play. All right. So I'm going to turn my video off so that I can close my eyes, because I need to close my eyes to concentrate and to do imagery. All right. So let's say we'll do it with yourselves, and then you can have the experience, and then you could do this with a client. Okay, I just invite you to close your eyes right now and just take a few breaths in and out. And I'd like you to float back to a time in your childhood around the age of 8, and bring up an image where you were playing or having fun. So for a lot of our clients, they will be able to get an image quickly. Now, for a client who's experienced trauma, you could say this. You'd say, I know that there weren't a lot of opportunities in your childhood for fun and play, and that you felt quite scared a lot of the time. So I want to help you create that right now. So some examples of things that children might like to do, things like play on the swings, or ride their bike, or swim at the beach, or build Lego, or just sitting down reading a book. What do you imagine you as a child would have liked to have done? Okay, so that's what you would say. And you're giving your client permission to tune into, you know, their own happiness and their own desires by asking that. Okay, now I want you to imagine that your adult self is here in this image and is getting closer and closer to this child version of you. And as you get closer, this happy child recognizes you, sees you, and makes eye contact with you. And I want you to make eye contact back with him or her. I want you to smile. And I want you to say something that would just really encourage or validate this child's happiness. Say, it gives me so much pleasure to see you here having fun. It gives me a lot of joy to see you happy and free, having fun. And then I want you to say something where you're giving permission for that child to prioritize fun and play in their lives. So you might say, I want you to know that, being happy and free like this, you're allowed to do that. You have my permission. I will create that for you. Okay, so that's an example of just the initial connection that you make with the happy child mode. So what you're doing there is that you're getting an image of the child playing, or in some cases you're actually having to create an image or give suggestions. Get closer to the child, notice the signs of joy. Okay, we mirror and validate their joy. So we're really resonating with the child in that happy state. And we're giving the child the message that this is good and I'm enjoying seeing you playing and having fun. Okay, because a lot of the time this happy child mode feels bad, or like it doesn't have permission, or it's doing something wrong by prioritizing their own enjoyment and energy. And give them permission to express and share their joy with the world, that this is a really important energy, that you want to create a life situation that values this this mode. Okay, so that's just a basic connecting with the happy child mode. If we were curious about what's blocking the happy child mode, this might be what we might do. Imagery for assessment. Okay, so we might say, okay, now I'd like you to transition to a scene where you don't feel safe to play and be spontaneous. So you're still the same age, you're 8, but now you're in a situation where you don't feel safe to play and be spontaneous. Okay, I want to speak to this child. I just want to find out what's going on in his or her environment that's stopping him from feeling free and safe. So then you'd have a dialogue with the child. You'd say, notice that you've stopped playing. I've noticed that you've stopped having fun. And tell me what's going on here. And here we're looking for any blocks. So we're looking to, is there something blocking their sense of fun and play and rest and unstructured activity, because they might be getting messages that, no, you have to do work, or you have to help other people. Or we're looking for blocks to just their free expression, that they feel like their energy, that their happiness, that their vibrancy is too much in that household. They feel bad expressing their energy and vibrancy because they sense that that makes other people feel upset or angry. Okay, so you can see how there in that imagery for assessment, you'd be getting a sense maybe of what schemas or what healing pathway you might want to go back to. Okay. So healing pathway 1. So if you discover that there's unrelenting standards, that your clients are very high stress, perfectionistic, got a lot going on on their plates, that they're under so much stress, in that sort of sympathetic nervous system response, that that is blocking intimacy and connection in the relationship. So here are some schema healing practices that we might do with these clients. All right, so the healthy adult mode gives permission to the happy child to spontaneously express pleasure, excitement, and joy. I cannot understate the importance of this step, the permission. Okay, because the happy child mode starts to look to who's the authority figure, who is the authority of my life, who says how I should be, or what's okay about how I should be. And if the authority figure in their life was a parent who is not giving permission for that child to spontaneously express themselves or to have fun, we want to transfer that sort of authority onto the healthy adult. Yeah. So we want to be the part of us, then we're stepping into our own healthy adult and saying to our own happy child, you have my permission to make fun and pleasure a priority. Okay, you have my permission. The healthy adult mode recognizes the central importance of joy and fun in intimate relationships. Like from a, from a more wise perspective, we can go, well, I know how important it is for you to be able to access your fun and joy. And I know what happens when that part of you is suppressed. I know what happens to intimate relationships where a person has to cut off from their own joy and intimacy. You know what I mean? We've seen enough intimate relationships crumble and know that there weren't high degrees of spontaneous expression of fun, of joy and delight going on when those relationships ended. Now, we know the importance of this mode. And the healthy adult mode does not succumb to guilt for prioritizing or honoring their energy, or succumb to societal pressures about income or roles, oh, well, I'm a good mother, or I'm a good wife, or I'm just being a good husband, I'm just being a good father. When people get really stuck on roles, they are also quite entrenched in the approval seeking, recognition seeking schema, which is, I've got to present myself in a certain way to the outside world. I've got to be seen to be a good mother. Therefore, I have to have a clean house because I can't stand having other people have negative thoughts about me. Does that make sense? Meanwhile, sacrificing their own energy levels, just putting all of their energy into achieving something so that they can be seen in a certain way. But if that's impacting on your energy levels, then we have to sort of get to a point where we say, well, I'm not going to succumb to those ideals if it comes at a cost to my energy and also my availability for intimacy and connection. It doesn't succumb to perfectionism, ideals of productivity, things like that. So some actual behaviors, if we're embodying this, we really prioritize work-life balance, aka how many hours in a day are dedicated to work versus rest. An honest look at how our days are structured, rather than just talking about work-life balance being some kind of vague, concept. No, this is a real thing. Okay, how many hours or minutes slotted into your day where there's not something structured, where there's not an activity that's going to take up that time? Doing nothing. I'm getting really good at doing nothing these days and being okay with that. Okay, emotional expression. So emotional expression in general, just being very authentic and spontaneous in whatever you're feeling, just becoming comfortable expressing how you truly feel moment to moment is going to help with this. But laughter, obviously, the more laughter there is, the more we sort of slip into that social engagement system. Dancing, singing, art, creativity, surfing. I should have put surfing on there. I think, not only men, but, back when I was younger, there was like 80% of people that surf were men and less so women. But I think the men who surfed had really tapped into this happy child mode. They'd really tapped into what gives them pleasure and joy and reconnects them with their body, and and can quickly reset them and sort of dissolve any stress from their day. For some people, it's reading, having baths, any type of relaxation, maybe music. Nature, being in nature is a massive one for me. Like, if at least every other day I need to be in nature, walking, reconnecting, being, amongst the trees, just looking at the nice scenery as I go for a walk. And that really resets this, resets that stress. Yoga, meditation, anything to do with the physical world, even baking. And really important one is, and this is my little secret ingredient, is using the imagination. And since we're mostly psychologists and working in mental health on this webinar, this is our domain, is the mental realm. But use it to our advantage. Use our imagination to create positive future events with a partner. Fantasizing about a partner, and just being able to sort of create an image or a movie in our mind of, the next time we're with our partner and what we could be doing together, and it's positive, relaxing. That's sending a signal to the social engagement system that, our mind can't differentiate between what's real and what's imagined, or a part of our mind. So we can make use of that and create instances of connection and intimacy with our partners, even if, we've got a busy day. We can still make use of that. It's really powerful, right? Okay. What are the outcomes of doing all this healing work, in the Healing Pathway 1, including fun and play? What are the outcomes? Our clients become more present. So they're more in the here and now. What's going on in my life right now? Not planning ahead. What have I got to get done this afternoon or tomorrow or this week? Our clients become more relaxed. Bonus. Our clients become more in their body. Client becomes more connected to the physical world, actually what's in our third dimension reality right here in front of us, not in our mind, which might be in the future. And this is a doorway to sensuality. Okay, so we have to be in our bodies if we're going to be available for connection and intimacy. It doesn't happen if we're sort of so in our heads and we've got to work out this problem, or sorry, I can't connect with you right now. Can you go away because I have too many things going on in my mind? We're not available for intimacy. We have to be comfortable being in the here and now. We've cleared our mind of all those demands, and it's a very much a physical here and now experience. And that sort of, just this sensuality to me just means being in the physical world and not in the mental world. All right, so let's look at some ideas working with clients that need to deal with other people's moods, or other people's moods are what impacts on their happy child mode, or what affects it or blocks it. Right. So some schema healing practices that are going to help with your clients with subjugation, with self-sacrifice, that feel responsible for other people, that feel a lot of guilt. Maybe they even fear a partner's mood, like, oh, my partner's so moody, but then they are having to suppress their own positive mood states to try and sort of match the partner's mood state. The healthy adult mode in this situation embodies a new set of beliefs, okay, which include the belief that other people's moods sometimes need limits set on them. Now, this is new information to, you know, a client who has grown up in a family situation where you weren't allowed to set limits on other people's moods because they were a parent. You're not, if you're a child, you're well aware that you can't go to a parent and say, hey, dad, like, you really got to keep your anger in check because you're really giving off a real negative vibe and it's really affecting me, right? That just does not happen for a child confronting a parent. Now, if that repeated itself in an intimate relationship, then you might have a partner who's not setting limits on their partner's mood. So their partner kind of gets into these moods and projects their negative mood onto, you know, whoever's in their 3-meter radius. And if the person on the receiving end of that negative mood doesn't feel that they have permission to set limits on that and address that and say, hey, you know, I recognize you've had a stressful day, but it's really important that you consider how we connect with each other when you come home from your stressful day. And, you know, it's been feeling like you've been sort of blaming me, or it feels like you're sort of angry at me when you behave in certain ways. You know, that's setting limits on someone else's mood. Another belief would be, you know, that other people have the resources to regulate their own mood without feeling like we need to sacrifice our own positive mood state. So when we start to believe that, oh, well, all adults have a prefrontal cortex that is fully developed by the age 30 or whatever, you know, by the age of 30, all adults have a resource in their brain, which means that they can choose to regulate their own mood, that they can be very intentional, they can be very conscious about and put thought into how they're going to manage their mood and also the impact of their own mood on a partner. Okay, so it's really important that some of our clients and some of us need to actually be introduced to this new belief, because the belief is that well, you know, he doesn't have the resources to manage his mood, so it's up to me. I have to offset it by tiptoeing around or cleaning the house perfectly or making sure that there's no problems or making sure that, you know, the children are perfectly behaved. So, you know, that person might really take on the responsibility of creating a positive mood state in the other person, but actually that other person has the most resources, the most direct access to managing their mood. Okay, so I've got a question here. How can we help someone whose partner cannot manage their mood from something like TBI, traumatic brain injury, or dementia? It's so hard because they don't have the resources. Okay, so they don't have the resources. They don't have that access to that prefrontal cortex, you know, real conscious, intentional stuff. So if I was working with someone who was being impacted by a partner who would sort of, you know, project their sort of negative mood, etc., because they couldn't regulate, they couldn't manage their own moods, I would still be helping the other person to set boundaries. And the boundary would be more like, I'm going to have to take myself away. You know, each time you explode, if you explode like that with me, I'm going to have to remove myself from the room, okay? And I'll come back in half an hour or in an hour to see how you're feeling then. Okay, that's how I would be supporting a client who is on the receiving end of all of that. Okay, so they're setting a boundary. It's not punitive. It's not saying I'm going to punish you by going, you know, by taking space. It's saying I'm going to take space for myself because it's very unhealthy for me to be around you when you've got that uncontrollable angry mood. Yeah. And that person, that the partner might say, oh, that's not very nice, you know, I can't help it, I've got dementia. And a loving partner might say, yes, I know it's your dementia, I don't think it's you, I'm not saying that it's you, I'm not doing this to punish you, I'm doing this to just to protect myself, because it's really damaging for me to be, you know, in the same room as you when you are projecting this negative mood. So I hope that helps you answer that question. What else is healing? Embodying the belief that partners who get angry and frustrated a lot need to practice self-control and consider the impact on their partner when expressing this, so they don't activate a fear state. So it's the responsibility of the person with the reactive mood to practice more self-control. And also embodying the belief that partners can experience periods of stress or depression in the relationship without making their partner feel guilty or responsible for their mood or current problems. So if I was going through a period of stress or depression, I can still be at the same time very mindful of not projecting that onto my partner and making my partner feel guilty or like it's all his fault. And if he was going through a period of stress or depression in his life because he didn't like his job, or you know, his son was acting out or whatever, he can go through a period of stress without somehow turning on me and making me feel like I'm the main cause of his current stress. Okay, so you can suffer from depression and not turn on your partner. Okay, it doesn't have to be, you know, they don't have to go hand in hand. All right, so what are the outcomes of taking this healing pathway? All right, we're about 10 minutes to go. The outcomes of taking this more assertiveness pathway, which is setting limits on other people's moods, the outcomes are that your client becomes more certain and strong in themselves. So they start to feel really quite autonomous and strong within themselves, confident in themselves. The client then starts to create more reciprocity in the relationship. So the client who's setting limits on the other person's mood and saying, hey, no, it's not okay for you to project all of your negative mood onto me like that. And if they're saying that repeatedly, you know, just a gentle chipping away, gentle pressure, that over time, a person who's engaged and committed in the relationship will start to take on board the requests of their partner, and they'll start to be more considerate. And your client will feel good because they are actually creating more reciprocity in the relationship. They're starting to feel like, oh, he or she is starting to listen, and they are starting to take on board, you know, and I said, it's not okay for you to yell at me like that, you know, and my partner is really taking that on board, and I'm starting to see a shift. And your clients will become very energized by that, and they'll feel good about that, and they'll start to feel more generous towards their partner, and like they can be loving. Oh, I'm happy to be affectionate with my partner because I feel like they're considerate of me. But if you don't feel like your partner's being considerate of you, then you're going to become quite stingy with your affection. So we don't want to just set that up. We want to avoid that kind of going down that path. So this is a doorway to emotional safety. Okay, we feel emotionally safe with someone when we feel like we're their equal, like there's not one person that dominates with their negative mood, you know, and the other person just has to walk on eggshells. That's a real imbalance. This way, it's more, I feel like we're both autonomous beings. We can both have a say. We can both set limits. We can both express our complaints with each other, and we'll listen and take on board each other's complaints. That feels emotionally safe. What doesn't feel emotionally safe is if one person feels like they have to suppress their needs, and because that's going to detract from this happy child mode. All right, just one more imagery rescripting would be in a situation where, okay, say in the previous imagery, we brought up an image where the child self felt like they couldn't be their happy selves, where they felt unsafe to be fully self-express. And for some reason, their joy, it wasn't safe for them to be joyful. In this situation, we might say, okay, now what I want you to, it doesn't have to be in the same image, it could be, okay, what I want you to do now is transition into a situation in your current life with your partner. Okay. And I want you to imagine that you're in a situation with your partner where you also don't feel safe to be joyful, and you don't feel relaxed, and you don't feel like you're safe and you can just be at ease. Okay. And then what we're going to do for rescripting is that we're going to coach our clients to speak to their partner in this image. Okay. So to set some limits, to be assertive. So we're going to say, okay, Jane, I want you to turn to your partner and I want you to express what you've told me. I want you to say to your partner, you know, sometimes I don't feel like I'm able to relax in certain conditions around you, you know, when you're in a certain mood. And then get them to address the specific issue. For example, when you come home and you've, you know, there's been all these dramas at work, I feel like sometimes you take out your frustrations on me. And then coach your client to say something in the image to their partner around what they want. I want to feel more relaxed and at ease in your presence. I want our evening times to be where we reconnect, where we enjoy each other's company. I know that's not going to happen every day, and I understand that. But I'd really like you to take on board, you know, my experience, what I've been noticing lately. Okay, so you can see how you can use imagery rescripting in that situation to get your client to imagine being assertive and setting limits on a negative mood in a partner, which is basically creating the environment that would invite the happy child mode. Okay. That could work equally well with a chair dialogue. This would be almost exactly the same dialogue. Your client is in the left chair in their healthy adult who is integrated with the happy child mode, and you're coaching them to have a dialogue with their intimate partner by saying, you know, I've been noticing that when you've been coming home lately in a stressed mood, I feel like that has been projected onto me. And, you know, often I've had quite a good day. I've been in quite a happy mood. And I've noticed that you know, the moment that you've come in, that I get caught up in this negative mood. And I don't want that to be how we do things all the time, every day. Yep. And then you could say, what is your partner saying back to you? And they might be saying things like, oh, well, you don't understand how hard it is in my job, and I work so hard, and I've got so much pressure on me at work. And then step 3 is coach your client to stay in healthy adult mode and say, yes, I understand how stressful your job is, and I can totally empathize with that. But our relationship is a place where I want you to feel supported about your stressful job. But if you come home and take your mood out on me, I don't feel like I can support you. And I want to be there to support you, you know, rather than being on the opposite team, right? So you can see how it works equally well in imagery or chair work. All right. So ongoing intimacy work, ongoing all the time, never stops. This is how I see intimacy. It's just an ongoing journey that we're always creating joy and safety for both partners in the relationship. That the relationship honors both feminine and masculine expressions of joy and freedom, and therefore libido. So there has to be a place for, you know, a feminine expression, which is that sort of joy, delight, you know, the sensual, the physical world, and also masculine expressions of freedom, which is, you know, exploration or adventure or pursuits or overcoming challenges. We really ideally want to be creating relationships where both of these energies are honored because that's where libido comes from these sort of natural essences. Making your own joy plus your partner's joy a priority, not just one. You know, one person's joy is not more important than the others. You know, ideally, we're creating a life together where I can, you know, I feel great and you feel great, or you're connected to what makes you feel good, and so am I. Okay, so we're pretty much at the end. I'm just going to check if there's any more questions. Yes, okay, very good. So here's a couple of suggestions for Instagram accounts to follow, to really, you know, if you're really interested in, you know, deep intimacy and connection. Of course, mine is up there. For women, please follow my account on Instagram. Also, Michaela Bohem and Morgan Day Cecil. So both Michaela and Morgan are people that I've coached with myself and just gained so much from work that I've done with them. So they're two that I can recommend personally to you to follow. And some Instagram accounts which I think are really great for men are Dr. Stan Tatkin. Some of you are familiar with his work, the PACT model for couples. The Instagram account Man Talks by Connor Beaton, and also Mike Campbell MC is another great one. I believe he's based on the Gold Coast, and so these some really great suggestions for men and women who are, you know, interested in making, yeah, intimacy and connection a real priority. All right, so we're done. So in terms of further training with me, I've got two things coming up this year. One is a workshop in Brisbane on the 30th and 31st of October on schemas and wellbeing. So that's run with my colleague, Dr. Rachel Wheeler, and you can find out the details there. And also we're running an online coaching group on self-reflection starting from the 1st of September, and there's 12 places available in that, and it's a 90-day program for people that are just wanting to do more self-reflection and activate more well-being in their own lives. So you can find out more about that there at thewellbeingcodes.com. So that is it for the intimacy series, schema therapy webinars. I really hope that you've gained a lot from these webinars, and that it has a big impact on your life, on your own personal lives, as well as the lives of your clients. It's been my pleasure. Please stay tuned to the work that I do on, you know, on social media and websites and all of that. And yeah, and I just look forward to, you know, if at some point in the future, if something really resonated and really helped you, feel free to drop me a line, because I love hearing little stories like that. All right, so thank you so much for those of you that could join on live today, and also for those that are going to be catching this in the recording. Thank you so much. Wonderful. All right, you're welcome. You're welcome. All right, goodbye, everyone.